about his old Atari. I said sorry, I'ma have to pass like Nash to Amari. Tiger up early on a Sunday sinking birdies while the pigskin spinning through the air tight and birdie. It's a TD, it's a TKO, a home run, it's a hat trick. Ain't no way to be an all-star without practice. So if you down to sacrifice your life for a draft pick, it's a pretty sweet position you can live in if you have some things in the air. If you got game, waving like you just don't care. If you got game, playing like you got no fear, then you got game. If you came here to win, yeah, you got game.
Hey there, welcome to rBeatz Live. I'm your host, Greazy Keyz, with another episode of Local Music Somewhere. Thrilled to have in the studio today via Zoom is an incredible artist, Jarrod Lawson. Jarrod, welcome to rBeatz Live, man. Really appreciate you taking time to come on and talk about your music and some upcoming shows you have here in Charlotte. Welcome to the studio.
Appreciate you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Very cool. So, Jarrod, as a fellow keyboard player, I'm just enamored with your talent and your skill, and not only in your keyboard skills, but your voice and all that you're doing musically. But for guests who maybe haven't heard of you before, tell us a little bit about your music and some of your background.
Yeah. So I grew up kind of out in the country, sort of isolated from. Like we lived miles from other homes. And so
Right.
I kind of like, this was after we had moved from California to Oregon. I was about 8 years old, and I was kind of just really starting to take music a little more seriously, and kind of, I was exploring my father's record collection, where I found, great old Stevie Wonder records from the 70s, which are still just my favorite music of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Donny Hathaway and Etta James, and just this treasure trove of great old soul and jazz records. And I think from that age, I started to kind of, it started to build in me that maybe that's what I wanted to do with my life.
Really? At that age, at 8 years old?
Well, I mean, it was beginning to kind of grow, I
Yeah.
guess is what I'm saying. But it wasn't until
Right.
I was about 13 that I found my way to the keyboard. And then I really started to take it much more seriously. I think I was so intrigued with harmony at that point in my life, and once I found my way to the piano, I was like, whoa, just like what the amount of harmony that you can cover, and what is at your disposal when you sit down
Right.
to a piano
Yes.
is just kind of unparalleled. So I kind of began my journey of sort of exploring my own talent and seeing like what I could do with it. And again, I think Stevie Wonder was a huge influence on me from a young age, and I, in some ways, kind of modeled myself after him, in the sense that I knew that I wanted to write beautiful lyrics and melodies, and with sophisticated chord changes, and I wanted it to be funky, and
Right. Yes.
just all the things. I think kind of Stevie put into this package that was the most compelling for me. And so,
Well, it definitely shows through, and I've had an opportunity to kind of delve into more of your catalog, and wow, what a breadth of material. I know you put out your first solo record back in 2014, correct?
correct.
But then prior to that, where were you in the scene? Were you more like a side musician, or where did those first several years of your development? How did you hone your chops there?
Yeah, I mean, well, I lived in Portland, Oregon most of my life. And, as a kind of young burgeoning musician, I played gigs just kind of there in the Portland scene and didn't really venture out. I mean, I traveled a lot, but I didn't travel specifically to perform.
Right.
And I remember at some point, there's a great bass player out in Portland named Ben Jones. And at some point he was like, hey, man, what are you doing? Get the hell up out of Portland.
Right on.
Get out there into the world and start
Yeah.
sharing what you do. And so I did. 2014, I put out that record, and I immediately started touring all over Europe and Japan and
Yes.
Indonesia. And so, yeah.
And again, incredible stuff. And I love how your live shows incorporate not only your original music, but just incredible versions of some of these iconic songs. Like I said, Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire, blood, sweat, and tears. I've seen some of your live footage, and it's like you have this incredible, like, 7-piece band behind you, right? Just and hey, hats off to you for kicking out your own versions of "Footsteps in the Dark" by Isley Brothers, or like, "I Would Die for You," right, by Prince. Like, to take a song that's iconic and to have the confidence to kind of put your own spin and put it back out there on your own. Way to go. I mean, it's and to do it justice as well. So where do you find, that courage to do that, to take a song that's already, such iconic song and sort of reinterpret it? Where do you, how do you do that?
I don't know. I guess that's a great question. I think that over time, just kind of like being out in the scene and seeing the response from people, and I will specifically say a lot of folks in the Black community, kind of responding in the way that they do to my music. And also, it's just when I would kind of casually throw in a little cover, maybe I'm just doing like, maybe I'm going to try out, "Knocks Me Off My Feet" by Stevie Wonder tonight and just see how that goes.
Nice.
Slowly over time, I've gotten really good response from that and enough encouragement to make me feel like, okay, it's okay. I can do it. They don't hate me for it. So.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. And so you say tonight, so you have a gig somewhere tonight? Are you in Nashville, in your hometown now tonight, or where are you?
I'm in Nashville. I don't have a gig tonight though.
No. Okay. But I do see you're kicking off a tour, correct?
I've got a tour coming up. Yep. At the end of this month.
Right.
Which I'm very excited about.
You got tour dates kicking off in Phoenix, Arizona, right?
Yeah,
on April 25th. So you got a few West Coast dates, and then you make it over your way to here on the East Coast on 5/3 and 5/4 here in Charlotte at the Middle C Jazz Room, which has been a great venue. Not your first time here, correct?
No, I just had my first visit there. What was it, maybe 6 months ago?
Right.
And I had never been to Charlotte before. I'd never performed in Charlotte.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I had no idea what the response was going to be, but we ended up selling out. So I was like, wow, we need to come back and do this again. And of course, I was talking with Larry Farber, who was just like the most gracious host to us and such a lovely man. And I've been in touch with him since then. And he was just like, really, really psyched to bring us back out. So
it's a fantastic room. I mean, like I said, you haven't experienced Charlotte much, but Charlotte, has had a pretty vibrant music scene. It's not one of the top cities that you would think about, like, say, Nashville or LA or even like Portland, I would say. But I think, but Larry particularly has been a huge part of the scene, not only, through Middle C Jazz, but also, just as a booking agent. He was involved with East Coast Entertainment, which is pretty established booking agency here in town that's really helped out a lot of local artists and national artists, get out there and get in front of folks. So, but Middle C, what a great room. And here you're going to be booked here for Saturday and Sunday, May 3rd and May 4th. Is that correct?
Correct.
2 nights in a row. That's awesome. Yes.
And I was going to add to that. I haven't announced this yet, but I was just working up a flyer to kind of, put this out. The band that I'm bringing with me is actually the band that I just performed with when I did a little kind of DC, Maryland, Virginia tour. So they're a bunch of Baltimore-based guys.
Fantastic.
Incredible band. It's going to be maybe the band that you've seen me with recently, 7-piece with basically Noah Pierre's band. If you're
Fantastic.
Noah Pierre out of Baltimore. So I'm going to be bringing those guys out.
I know it's going to be blowing the faces off of the folks in the audience because, just if you look online, quick search, you can find you guys. And there's some great renditions of some songs that you guys are just blowing and top notch. Now, when you have a band like that, do you get opportunities to stretch out during the show, or do you keep it pretty succinct and set to your set? You guys have chances to jam or take solo breaks. How do you guys approach that when you're in a live setting?
I mean, I think for the most part, this is probably the most structured set that I've ever had.
Yeah.
Because we've got, really nice horn arrangements on a lot of this stuff. So there's definitely structure, but there are moments in there, where it's like, okay, we're going to open this up for a second. We're going to let Noah blow a face melting solo on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's going to be some really nice moments of spontaneity. And of course, I love to kind of take a moment sometimes and just maybe I'll get off the keys and improv on the mic a little bit. And and have some interplay with some of the other players. So yeah, we'll have some fun moments like that. Absolutely.
Excellent, excellent. What I love is not only are you so proficient in your live show, but then also, you're not afraid to put out like just instrumentals. Like you have sort of an alias, right?
Hmm.
Orpheus that you've
Yep.
released music under as well. That I've had some time to kind of delve into and just blown away. So when you're writing songs like that, what's your process? Like, do you start musically usually, or do you start lyrically? Tell us a little bit about that approach.
I mean, I approach music from all different angles. It really just depends on the day and my mood.
Right.
Maybe it's just like I pick up an instrument that I've never played, and then
Really?
all of a sudden there's a sound that inspires me to go a specific direction.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, again, yeah, and sometimes I'm just like driving around in the car and I come up with a lyrical idea first, and then I'm like,
Uh-huh.
okay, now I get to write music to the lyrics. So I really do approach it from all different angles. I try to keep it interesting and fresh for me, and yeah, hopefully that translates through and keeps it fresh for everybody else too.
Well, it's everything that you've put out is phenomenal, and it spans such, obviously you're kind of in that R&B soul vibe, but yeah, like the instrumentals are just, are very cool and chill and just like could be great, just background music, or if you can listen intently, you could probably listen to it over and over again and hear something different every time. And then
Yeah,
lyrically, what you bring, vocally, harmony wise, man, it's such a cool thing that an artist like yourself is continuing such a great tradition, like you said, of embracing, Black origin music and keeping it out there for all audiences. So,
yeah.
hats off to you there.
Well, thank you, man.
Fantastic
I
stuff.
appreciate that.
When you're working in the studio, do you find yourself using your vintage equipment? Like, your vintage worlds are there in the studio. Do you find, that's where you like to draw inspiration from, instrument wise, or are you working with plugins? What's your process there?
I do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I do love, although it's a little bit more work sometimes when I get on my Fender Rhodes, which is right
Yeah.
here to my right. It's an
Yeah.
old, 1974 Mark One,
Yeah.
and it's, although it's in nice condition because I put some money into reconditioning it, it's still, as you know, vintage instruments are so finicky.
Yeah.
One day I'll be playing it and I'll realize, oh man, this thing's just not as in tune as I wish it was. And so
Yeah.
maybe that's enough for me to I'll switch over to a plug-in because it'll be in
Right.
tune and I can just quickly kind of get into the flow. So yeah, I mean, I love to use my vintage instruments, and I'm very proud of them. I've also got you mentioned my little Whirly 200A back there, which is
Yeah.
one of my prized possessions. So yeah, I love vintage instruments, but they are so finicky. And so I do love to have plugins as well. I use Keyscape, I use,
I was going to ask you, Keyscape is my favorite. Like
I
to
love
me, like those
Keyscape.
guys really nailed it with that sound
Yeah,
bank of acoustic piano, quirky electric pianos, like even more quirky, like medieval sounding organs and
man,
things like that. Man, I can only imagine what you could do with those.
just about
But
anything you could hope for is in
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Yeah, I really do love that plugin, Spectrasonics. Actually, their whole line of plugins, the
hmm,
Omnisphere, Trillion bass module, I use all of those in probably
yeah,
every recording session I do.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Hats off to those guys, man. They really got it down. And
yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
they really are very, like I said, the keyboard is centric. A lot of plugins, are seem to be more studio centric, more engineer centric, but with
Hmm.
Keyscape, they really, I think, are have the performer in mind, and
Yep,
they really nail it. So I know that could be really a really good tool for a songwriter such as yourself. Fantastic.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we got spring and summer dates coming up. You're going to be wrapping up in Detroit of all places for this run, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Oh man, well I can only imagine what's the vibe like there in Detroit. Have you played there
Man, the
often?
vibe in Detroit, funny enough, I had a very similar experience to when I played in Charlotte this past year.
Yeah,
I also played in Detroit, and it wasn't the very first time I played in Detroit, but it was the first time I played in a club.
yeah,
Before that, I had played like a little outdoor show for like 100 people.
right.
But I played at One Mic in Detroit this past year, and it was packed out, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, "What is happening here? This is crazy." I had no idea that I had that kind of a following there. And yeah, so since then I've played there again,
Yeah. Yeah.
and had played 2 shows. And so yeah, it seems to be some of these cities in the U.S. are now really starting to grow. Some of these cities that I wasn't able to get to in my first couple of years of touring because I went immediately to where the demand was, which was Europe, Japan,
Yeah.
some of these other
Brilliant.
territories. And so
Yeah.
now I'm starting to realize there's a lot of growing demand here in the United States. So I'm trying to kind of make the rounds and make people happy as best I can. So
Right on. Are you seeing that as you think as sort of a resurgence, like post COVID? Like what was your time like during that? I know for me personally, that was probably some of the scariest few years of my entire career. You know, especially being a
yeah,
full-time musician, playing out,
absolutely.
and then I'll never forget like March 15th that weekend. It's like, oh, sorry, all gigs, everything's shut down, and obviously
Yep.
it affected us all. But do you think that that's what you're seeing in around the country is sort of a resurgence post COVID?
I mean, I definitely think so. That really was a very trying time for everyone, and I think gig workers really suffered greatly
Oh,
during that
absolutely.
time. I
Hmm.
mean, in some ways, I still feel like I'm trying to recover from
Yes.
the COVID era. But yeah, there's a combination of things there for me. Again, I didn't have a distribution deal with my first record in the United States at all.
Right.
So, so even though there is, that first record does have some circulation here in the States and people are familiar with it, they were not so much in the beginning of my career. And so now, I've been watching like my streaming analytics, which is a great way to kind of gauge where the demand is for your
Yeah.
music in the world. And so, you know, in the past, it was always London, was it basically at the top of my streaming analytic like cities. London, Amsterdam, Tokyo, it was always places like that. And now
Yeah.
it's like, Atlanta, Detroit, Dallas, it's all these US cities have like swooped in and taken over, which is a really cool thing to see, to kind of be getting that love here at home. So
Right
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
good.
fantastic. Wow. Wow. So let's see here. So you come from a musical family, you say, like your dad, had a studio. So tell us a little bit about, also, growing up. Like, what did your dad do? Was he a producer or was he just a musician? How did he expose you besides the musical collection? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my earliest memories that I have, maybe around 2 or 3 years old, were in this basically like our home was a recording studio. It
Oh,
was
right
kind of like
on. Yeah.
in this
You
little
just
industrial
immersed in
area.
it, right? Just immersed right in it. That's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, it was if you walked in, you would not have thought, "Oh, this is where people live." It was literally like kind of in this weird little industrial, not residential area at all. And we lived there for a time. And my father had, like a proper, mixing console and they had a drum set in a little ISO booth that I loved to go in there and play on when I was 2 or 3 years old. And I just have so many great memories from that time. The just instruments were around, and there were musicians coming and going, and they were recording. And so, yeah, my father had his own band at that time, and they were actually kind of on their way to, really making a name for themselves. They were doing kind of opening sets for, I think bands like Steve Miller Band and
Wow.
Doobie Brothers, and
Yeah.
then yeah, at some point, my dad he was like in the negotiations for a record contract with Elektra, and something went sour, and he just told him to get effed
Right.
and walked
Right.
out.
Walked
And that
away.
was, um,
Amazing.
yeah, interesting development. But anyway, to kind of get back to what you're saying, yeah, that was the environment that I grew up in. Was this like recording studio environment, which I think like it is just such a part of me because, like I said, those are my earliest memories. I remember getting in there and playing on the drums and kind of developing some sense of like my rhythmic foundation at a very,
Yeah.
very young age. So,
That's amazing because it's been my experience. I have two adult children, and they're both musically inclined.
mhm.
But same thing is like, I we would have experiences together. We'd even jam together, and stuff like that. But as like a direct influence, I found it very difficult as a parent, even to try to, teach them a little bit. I always had to rely on friends to be teachers. But but I know just having the instruments around was enough to allow them to just immerse themselves at their own pace.
Yep.
And I'm very proud where both of them are at within their musical development. But yeah, it seems to either be one or the other. Like either you're gonna, as a child, you immerse yourself into your environment, musically, or you totally reject it. You're like, I don't want anything to do with that. So it's amazing to see that you took the latter or the former and man, what you've made out of it is just amazing. And I'm thrilled to hear everything else that you got coming out. But what about some? I looked at recently. You've done an incredible collaboration with a group called Nightcap that featured the drummer for Lettuce, right, Adam Dich. And that is a killer track called Long Haul, correct?
Yep. Correct.
So what's your approach with collaborations and things like that? Do you enjoy those sort of moments, or do you seek those out, or what's your approach when just collaborating with other artists?
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit more of that stuff coming to me these days. And Adam reached out to me this past year through my Instagram.
Oh, very
we had
cool.
never really connected like that before. Although we have a ton of like mutual friends. Somehow we had never connected and never spoken to each other. And he just hit me up and was like, "Hey man, I'm working on this new project with some Denver cats," and he basically, threw me this instrumental track that was completely finished. It sounded like it was like ready for mastering. And he was like, "I'd love to see what you might do with this." And so I just, started listening to it, and I was actually in the middle of kind of doing some traveling and some dates, and I didn't want to let that opportunity pass me up because, first of all, I'm a huge Adam Dich fan, massive.
Yes.
So I was super stoked to work with him, and I was like, man, I even though I'm like in the middle of touring right now, and I don't really have a ton of time, I'm gonna make this work. So like, I remember being in the airport, and I was just like having my headphones on, and I'm listening to this track over and over, like letting lyrics come to me, and I'm just kind of writing down lyrics into my phone and coming up with some melodic ideas, so that as soon as I got home, and back in my studio, I already had all the ideas ready to go. And so I just knocked it out one day, sent him the track the next day, and Adam sent me back a message that said, "That's it."
Yes.
That's it, with some money, with like a money emoji or whatever.
Yeah. Fantastic. And so the parts that you added on, did they leave them the way they were? I mean, what you added on was just perfect, and they let it go? Awesome.
Oh yeah, they left it exactly. I mean, they mixed it in properly.
Sure, right.
So yeah, Joshua Fairman, the bass player, is also the mixing engineer. He's a very, very capable mixing engineer, and absolutely stoked about that collaboration.
Again, it's a great track, and I think it's I've enjoyed it, and like I said, I'll put it on repeat, man, and listen to that jam. It's awesome. Well, hey, Jarrod, we need to take about a 2-minute break, have some announcements from our sponsors, and we'll be right back and talk to you more before we finish up. Thank you for being here.
Good. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome back to this week's segment of What's Trending Now on rBeatz Radio, Media, and Streaming Network. First of all, I'd like to take a second to thank y'all for tuning in to What's Trending Now and making all of our dreams here at rbeatz.com come true. My name is Annalise Pearl, and my new single, Lightheaded, comes out on April 25th. Stay tuned for more information as we get right into our DJ World Beats top trending songs. Now let's get started with this week's events. Upcoming local, national, and international concerts. Let's start off with Tosca Music's Juneberry Jams, located in Norwood, North Carolina, about an hour drive from Charlotte, with a line packed with soulful rock and roll, bluesy grits, and foot-stomping rhythms, taking place on Saturday, May 31st. Event starts at 5:30 p.m. You get your tickets at toscamusic.org. Black Box Charlotte presents Techno Music Vibrations featuring DJ and electronic producer Cloud. Taking place on Friday, May 2nd. Doors open at 10 p.m. and get your tickets at blackboxcharlotte.com. Galantis is performing a set at the Trio nightclub in Charlotte on Friday, May 16th. Doors open at 9 p.m. and you can get your tickets at triocharlotte.com. And this is Annalise Pearl, bringing you all the new details on the latest trending watercourt conversations. Stay on top of the rBeatz app and rBeatz.com, always bringing you the best independent, national, and international music artists, concerts, and influences on the rBeatz app. You all know the drill. Now let's get started with this week's DJ World Beats top trending songs. Spinning now on 25/8 366, our global pop stream, DJ World Beats brings you 7 Days of Freak by Kashmir, Shiniko, and Daidi, Something to Believe In by Avalon Roxton. And trending now on rBeatz Radio, our house and EDM stream, we have Bad Guy by Zed's Dead, Vortex by Umat Azkan. Coming up on We Global Radio, our hip hop and R&B stream, we have Run It Up by Humankind, Yeah Yeah and Millions by Lou Sarar featuring Anetta Boy, La 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 by Redman featuring Method Man. And closing out on USA Heroes, our classic rock and country station, we have Glass Heart by Dark Chapel and Still Dancin' by Billy Idol. And that concludes this week's countdown. Be sure to check in at our social media sensation show, What's Trending Now, and be sure to check out RBTZ TV on YouTube and rBeatz.com, and be on the lookout for my single, Lightheaded, coming out on April 25th. Thanks for watching.
rBeatz Radio isn't just a platform, it's a movement. A universal internet radio and media hub that has become the heartbeat of music discovery.
With a staggering peak of 7 million listens and an average of 80,000 listens per month, the world is tuning in. That's not just numbers, those are ears and eyes.
Yes, your brand amplified and elevated only on rBeatz Radio. Navigate the digital airwaves seamlessly with our intuitive platform. Imagine your brand being heard, being felt, being experienced. Picture your message flowing through the veins of our global network, reaching each listener.
Are you ready to elevate your brand to new heights? Step into the rhythm of success with rBeatz Radio.
Our platform is designed to ensure your brand doesn't just appear, it resonates. It doesn't just speak, it sings, dances, and vibrates with the rhythm of our audience's lives. This isn't just about advertisements. This is about creating a symphony where your brand is the melody. We're not just a service, we're an experience, and your brand can be at the center of it all. Your brand deserves a global stage. At rBeatz, we've turned up the volume on global outreach. This isn't about traditional advertising, it's about connecting, engaging, and resonating with music lovers all over the world. From indie beats in Brooklyn to mainstream hits in Mumbai, your brand becomes part of their story. It's about making your brand the rhythm that pulses through their day. Amplify your reach, connect with diverse audiences, and make an impact like never before.
Numbers don't lie. rBeatz isn't just a platform, it's a data-driven powerhouse. With a staggering 7 million peak listens and an impressive average of 80,000 listens per month, we're tuned into the pulse of the music world.
This is the power of a data-driven platform. We're not just throwing your brand into the void, we're strategically placing it in the spotlight, in front of an engaged, diverse, and music-loving audience.
Music is universal, and so is your brand's potential. rBeatz Radio is the crossroads where brands and music lovers from all walks of life converge.
Maximize your brand impact. Imagine your brand pulsating with the rhythm of music, reaching millions of ears and eyes worldwide. Picture your message resonating with each beat, each melody, each tune. This isn't just advertising, this is brand elevation, a symphony of success. Don't just be heard, be felt. Be a part of the rhythm of rBeatz Radio. The stage is set, the audience is waiting. It's time for your brand to join the beat. Advertise with rBeatz Radio today. rBeatz Radio, your brand, rBeatz. Our platform is your stage to amplify your brand's voice. This is where rhythm meets success, where your brand dances to the tune of progress. For advertising inquiries, contact www.rbeatz.com.
And welcome back to rBeatz Live. I'm your host, Greazy Keyz. I have incredible artist Jarrod Lawson in the studio today, talking about your upcoming spring-summer tour with a couple of stops here in Charlotte, North Carolina, coming up May 3rd and 4th. Got 2-night stands at the Middle C Jazz room here. Again, just a great venue here in town where, jazz hasn't really had a room to be highlighted in. And so we're just grateful for Larry Farber and that team there for having this room, which I think has been around for about 6 or 7 years now, survived through COVID, and it's just blowing up with all these fantastic artists like Jarrod. Jarrod, before we let you go, we got time for a couple more questions, but I want to ask you a little bit more about your background, like your style of the keyboard, obviously heavily influenced by Stevie Wonder and a lot of greats in that era. But were you classically trained as well, or what's your background there? Are you self-taught?
Not classically trained,
Yeah,
and I've had like a few lessons from a few different people over the
yeah,
course of my life, but
yeah,
largely self-taught.
yeah,
My father gave me some kind of early tutelage, on the keyboard, really just like
right,
the super basic understanding major and minor scales and major and
yeah,
minor triads and doing like inversions of triads up and down the keyboard, something he, wanted me to do kind of early on as a
yeah,
keyboardist. And I, of course, hated it, but the fact that he made me do that, now I can just grab chords all over the keyboard and it without even really having to think too much about it. So, man, that
right.
foundational stuff is so important.
But yeah,
Um,
go ahead. I
but
was
yeah,
saying
I mean,
some of your jazz, your phrasings, are just fantastic in advance. So, it's really amazing to hear some of the stuff you pull out from it. So, fantastic, good
I
stuff.
appreciate that. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of that is just listening to, again, from the time I was, whatever, in my early teens, I was really into pianists like Oscar Peterson and Errol
yes,
Garner and Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock. I
yes,
mean, those were like my guys that
yep,
just was consuming so much of that music and of course, trying to figure that stuff out on the keyboard just by lifting it with my ear.
yep, yep. I track exactly with you. That's a very similar background with me too, as well. Just
Nice.
picking out by ear, not never really having a much of a tutor or professional musician to teach me, but just kind of picking out
Yeah.
things by ear. So I really
Yep.
appreciate your approach, and just to hear what you're able to do with it is inspiring. So
Thank
thank
you
you so
so
much for
much.
that. Um,
Appreciate it.
so speaking of inspiration, what are some inspirations that outside of the music world that you draw from? Is it books or visual art or nature? Where do you draw inspiration outside of music?
I mean, yeah, nature is a huge one for me. I
Yeah,
really do love the natural world and just kind of being out. I mean, when I lived in Oregon, I hiked a ton, in the
yeah,
Columbia River Gorge there. It was like my church. So yeah, I think that's, definitely one of the things that kind of makes me feel, when I spend too much time in my studio and start to feel a little, stagnant or something. That's when
right.
I know I need to get out into some trees and see some waterfalls and kind of let my spirit recharge. Yeah, I would say that's one of my greatest influences for sure. And then my wife is just since she came into my life, she's been a
Yes,
huge inspiration. Of course, wrote a song about her called Evilly on my second record. And yeah, man, I've got a little baby girl on the way now.
congratulations.
Thank you. Very, very recent development. My wife is about maybe 15 weeks along. So,
Wow.
just
Well,
found out
hey,
it's a girl. So, yeah, I'm bringing a little baby girl into this world. So, I'm hugely inspired by that right now.
I
And
know
yeah,
that'll be changing your life in all the positive ways. That's awesome. That's great
absolutely. Yeah.
news. Um, social media wise, where can people find you? I know Instagram, your handle is JLawSings, correct? In which you've
Correct.
already got 150,000 followers, so you're not hurting there, which is amazing. But where else can folks find you online and maybe stream your music?
The best other place is just go to my website, JarrodLawson.com. You can find everything that you could possibly, want from all of my music to my tour dates. Yeah, everything is there. So
Fantastic. Well, Jarrod, thank you so much for taking time to be on here with us at Our Beats. It's been great to meet you and to talk with
and
you about your career, and thrilled about having you here in Charlotte coming up here again. That's going to be May 3rd and May 4th at the Middle C Jazz Room. Make sure to get your tickets because I know you're probably going to sell out both nights. And if you don't sell out, I know whoever's going to be there is in for one hell of a show. So Jarrod, thank you so much for taking time to be with us on R Beats today.
Thank you guys for having me on. It really means so much.
Definitely stay in touch. We'd love to have you back next time you're in town and help promote your shows. Or even if we can schedule, like when you're in town, have you in the studio with us sometime. That would be amazing.
I would love that. Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, this has been Greazy Keyz with R Beats. Really appreciate my guest, Jarrod Lawson, for being on the show with us today. You guys have a great afternoon. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, 316. Got game and pulled out his own Atari. I said sorry, I'ma have to pass like Nash to Amari. Tiger up early on a Sunday, sinking birdies while the pigskin spinning through the air, tight and birdie. It's a TD, it's a TKO, a home run, it's a hat trick. Ain't no way to be an all-star without practice. So if you down to sacrifice your life for a draft pick, it's a pretty sweet position you can live in if you have some things in the air. If you got game, wave like you just don't care. If you got game, playing like you got no fit, and you got game. If you came here to win, you got game.